to set the tone really quickly. This conversation should feel and will feel like two friends after a track workout or a long run.
Should we do some jumping jacks?
We can definitely do some jumping jacks. But welcome back uptown.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to have you here. How are you feeling about the book?
It's good. It's been busy this week. Morning, my publicist and I and Keisha have been running around like chickens without a head. Go! But it's been amazing. Yeah, really, really cool to kind of see this come to fruition. Yeah.
Want to get into these questions?
Sure, let's dive in.
Get into these questions. I wanted to start off just talking about your early life. And can you describe your early life in Laredo, Texas? How the Mexican drug war impacted your family and the community. For those that I've never been to Laredo, Texas. Just paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so Laredo, Texas, wow, there's so much to say. It's a very vibrant community, especially where I grew up in a barrio called Ghost Town. It's actually called Ghost Town. You can actually look it up on Google Maps because people are like, is it really called Ghost Town? I'm like, yeah, it's called Ghost Town. The joke was that we lived on top of the deck because there used to be a cemetery. I don't know if that's true. And so, yeah, it was very vibrant. I grew up in a household with 15 people, a 2-bedroom, so there's a lot of people there. But most of the people that lived there didn't work, so it was a party every day, carne asadas every day. I'm sure they're familiar with that. So it was really, really fun. And you see the Tejano culture really clear, and it's just beautiful, especially the food, the people. And I didn't really feel the Mexican drug war impacting my community or my barrio until I was maybe 10. And I noticed like some of my family members were in and out of prison, and my grandfather was sentenced to almost 20 years also. And I started noticing that definitely when I was 10. But it wasn't something that was alarming, I think. It was something you heard in the neighborhood. And the moment where I really was like, okay, this is serious was when I was 13 years old. My classmate got murdered in front of our school. This was 2005. And on my way to school, I saw the police in his house, and the word spread really fast that he was murdered. And the rumor was that perhaps his family was involved in the cartels, but no one really knew. And no one really knew until a couple of years ago. So that's when I really realized, okay, well, it's within our community, and it's impacting young people and just our family, especially poor communities in the south of Laredo. But it was one of those things that you just heard about, but then I started noticing it was impacting me directly, and when it really impacted me and my family was in 2006. I'm sure you read it in the book. My mother was kidnapped by cartels in 2006, so a year after my friend was murdered. So we left the barrio in hopes that, have a better life and go to the north side, even though it's not that far. But my mom's dream was, I gotta get her out of this environment. So she's away from that. But unfortunately, she was kidnapped just across the border in Nuevo Laredo. And that just made me really realize the issues at first hand. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It is a lot. One thing that comes to mind when you talk about this experience is like ignorance is bliss. I'm raising a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old in New York City, and they are now starting to understand that the guys on the corner aren't just hanging out there. They're doing illicit activity. And you want to preserve that you want to preserve their ignorance and their innocence. And unfortunately, you can't. And those experiences are what molds them into the adults that they will become.
Definitely.
I'm gonna move on to the next question. That's why we're segueing. But what led you to discover that turning point in your life? What led you to discover track and field as a potential path out of your circumstances? Like, what was that your escape from the lifestyle and that was created for you in Laredo?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's a lot that happened from the kidnapping to the track. But I've always ran track since I was very little, but I was in so many sports. My teacher discovered that I was running faster than all little boys. She's like, we should put you in track and field. And so what really made me choose track and field, because I did a lot of sports. I skateboarded, was a cheerleader, dancer, was shortly after the kidnapping, I ended up going to juvenile, and I was 16, and I thought, I gotta get out of here. how do I pave a new path for myself that no one in my family has ever had? And I think I have to take it upon myself to do something different. So I was like, well, if I just focus in track and field, maybe that is my path to get a scholarship, and be the first one in my family to get an education. I just didn't know how to do it, but I thought maybe I'll watch YouTube videos like of how to hurdle. At the time, it was pretty new. There was a lot of videos by then. So I just started YouTubing videos about hurdling technique and biomechanics, and just started going to track at the track 5:30 in the morning and like sneaking in because it was closed and it's a liability if you're hurdling without a coach. So I just stayed dedicated and thought, okay, this could be my ticket to freedom and have opportunities, and I stuck to that for a couple years.
What was the reception from your family when sneaking out at 5:30 in the morning? Yeah, I'm gonna pursue this career in track and field, or this is where I'm pouring all of my energy. Was it new to them? Was this something that they were supportive of?
My mom didn't know. She didn't know. She didn't know I was doing it. She's like, "Why are you waking up so early to go to practice? Who's there?" And I was like, "Oh, it's fine. There'll be coaches there." So I definitely lied about that because I'm pretty sure she'd be like, "No, don't do that." Especially after juvie, you're not supposed to. If I did break another law, then I'd go back to juvie, right? So, so I didn't tell anyone, and no one really knew what I was doing. It was just like. No, I don't think I told anyone what my goals were at the time, but I'm pretty sure they knew they'd be very supportive. Maybe not about sneaking in and breaking into a track, but the running part, yes.
It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
You gotta get it out. You got to.
That's funny.
Talk about hurdles. I just want to talk about overcoming obstacles, right? What kept you motivated and focused on your goal of winning a track scholarship despite the immense challenges you faced? Like, what was that like? What was that North Star for you?
Repeat that question one more time.
What kept you motivated and focused on your goal of obtaining that track scholarship despite the immense challenges that you were facing?
Yeah, I think for me it was definitely that thing of there must be something more out there for me. And though there was a lot of obstacles and hurdles, I was like, I'll deal with them later on, just keep focused. It was definitely hard though. As you read the book, there was a lot of internal dialogue and a lot of anxiety that I had no idea I was dealing with. But at the end of the day, I thought like this is my only moment. I have 2 more years before I graduate, and then my chances are done. Like I won't get a full scholarship or be able to leave.
How do you block out now? How do you now block out that internal chatter? I think of as an athlete, and like when I'm towing the line or when like mile 20 of a marathon, that conversation's happening. Like you're dying. You stop. Why are you doing this? Like, how do you now block out that internal chatter?
Now or then?
Then and now.
Okay. Then was
comparison.
tough. I think I was definitely hyperventilating a lot before the line. I think that was definitely really tough because I was always scared, like, oh, I'm gonna mess this up. There's a lot of negative thoughts. But once the gun went off, I was like, tunnel vision, you gotta go, it's now or never. And definitely leaving all the issues behind, but I don't think it was healthy to do that. Obviously, didn't have time to process things. And now I definitely sit with what I'm feeling. I think as an adult, I have the resources to know how to do that. But at the time, I just thought I'll deal with it when I'm older. Not now.
I feel like the skill set that you pick up as a runner or as an athlete through training can be applied to all aspects of life.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I'm sure you know how that feels when you're like, I'm dying, I want to give up. You're like, don't give up.
You can't give up,
Yeah, no. Yeah.
When I talk about achievements and reflections, how did it feel to become one of the top ranked hurdlers in the U.S. and the first in your family to attend college?
Yeah, that's a great question because I remember that moment very vividly when I had my last track meet in high school. At the time, I hadn't been scouted. I thought I hadn't been scouted yet by college coaches. And in Texas, it's usually like you make it to state and all the college recruiters are there. And it's really hard to make it to state. I'm sure there's some coaches here. It's like really, really difficult. And I had already been to state twice, my sophomore and junior year. And then my senior year, I still hadn't received any scholarship offers, or I thought I didn't. So I was like, this is my only chance. So when I ran my last race and I saw that I was ranked 13th in the US, I didn't win the race. I came in 4th place, but I was still ranked 13th in the U.S. because the first 3 girls were the top 5 girls in the U.S. at the time in the 300 hurdles. I knew when I saw my time, like, okay, I'm leaving. Like, this is gonna be my opportunity out. And then I saw the college recruiters at the finish line, like offering, like, come visit the school. And I knew I'm like, I'm gonna get my scholarship and go. So I was very happy. And I don't want to like spoil it, but that's the last chapter in the book. Yeah.
What impact do you hope that your story will have on readers, especially young people facing similar struggles? And just to set that question up a little better, there are Laredos all over the world. You know,
Yeah.
there are underprivileged kids who are using sports as their escape from whatever they're facing at home or whatever they're facing in their communities. Like, how do you hope that your story will have an impact on them?
Yeah, so I wrote this book in first person present tense from the perspective of young Christy, that's my nickname, young Elvira. I started writing when I was 16, and there's journal entries throughout the book. And I wrote it in that point of view because I thought that this book is a book that a young Elvira would have wanted to read. Because I think this would make her feel less alone, especially when it comes to the juvenile part. And I started writing it in juvenile because at the time I felt like hopeless, like all these bad things are happening. Why are they happening? You know, from the kidnapping to ended up in juvenile. So it wasn't until I met the young girls in juvie where I was like, wow, we're all dealing with similar experiences, and it really is because of the violence that's spilling across the border and trickling to low income communities in the barrios in Laredo, Texas. So meeting those girls, for some reason, it gave me hope that like I'm not alone and we're gonna be okay. And I have to write this story to tell their story, but also for other girls and young boys to feel like there are other people that are dealing with these things. So I hope that this book will provide a sense of hope. But also, one of the other messages that I would hope that this book provides is I use the hurdle as a metaphor. So I'm barely 5 foot tall, so hurdling wasn't the easiest. I was always scared. I was like, why am I doing this? I'm in the wrong sport, but you know, this is my ticket out. And coaches would say, you're short, like try another sport or another event. But something about the hurdles just challenged me, and I really wanted to do it and be really, really good. So as far as the hurdling goes, it's not just like hurdles in the dark, hurdling at 5:30 in the morning. But for me, it's like being an athlete and a coach. You often hear like, you got to win the race, you got to be a champion. Often I heard that, and I thought when I was in my final race in high school, this light bulb came up to me, and I'm like, you know, it's not winning first place. It's not about getting the scholarship. Like I am already a champion just by my willingness to try and leap over this scary barrier that I don't know if I'm gonna fall going full speed, but I want the message to be that it's not about winning. It's not about that. It's the willingness to try, and no one can take that away from you. So now looking back, I'm really proud that I was very scared of the hurdles, but I still took that leap, and it brought me here in New York City. And even though there was peaks and valleys, twists and turns, I'm very proud to be here in this very moment.
I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as a linear path, you
Definitely
know, and you're always meant to deviate a bit and then come back, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about broader impact. You know, how can communities and sports programs better support young athletes, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, in your opinion?
How can communities help?
Yeah.
If I had to choose an organization I think is doing that, is the Armory. So like just around the corner, because I work there. There's people here who've been there, who worked there. I wish I had that in Laredo, Texas. I'm hoping that things change, or just in all the Laredos in the U.S. around the world, because I think growing up in low-income communities, sometimes there's no parental guidance and oversight. You know, whether my mom's working full-time as a bartender, 5 p.m. to 4 in the morning, I'm on my own doing my thing, hoping that I don't get into trouble. But also other people who might have bad intentions, or you know, see that we didn't touch on the coaching part of the book, but there was a coach who offered to help me because he saw all these amazing things in me, and I think that really helped me with my self-esteem. And unfortunately, that relationship became really inappropriate and unhealthy. And based on my studies and research, I learned that kids from lower income communities are more likely and susceptible to end up in these types of relationships where you feel like there's no resources. I gotta do what I gotta do and be quiet. And that really affected me emotionally for so many years. So I think having resources like the Armory where they do help the community out, whether it's like with SATs and just having coaches. There's some amazing coaches here. I worked with Prince back there my first year of coaching in 2014 or 2015 at Calhoun. So I think their communities are doing a really good job, and I just hope that that's trickled also. But also as far as boundaries, that's something I wanted to talk about because as young people, we are not taught about boundaries. And when you have a really close relationship with coaches and athletes, sometimes that can get blurred. Like you don't know if if there's something inappropriate happening. So so definitely having resources in communities and places like the Armory is really, really vital. And I hope that by writing the book in first person present tense through the eyes of young Elvira, you're able to see how things can turn really, really bad quickly. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
That's a long answer.
No, but it's the answer that we needed.
Okay.
Thank you. What are your plans for the future, both personally and professionally? And how do you plan to continue sharing your story and advocating for change?
Yeah. So, about 10 years ago, I came to New York and I didn't have any money. I was like, I'm going to find a way to get this book deal. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a college degree yet because I broke my back, and then I later finished school online and started coaching at the Calhoun School. And that just sort of took me to coaching at the Armory where I met Josh and some other people here. And really love being in the space around helping young people. So now obviously it's different. I wrote the book and launching this nonprofit called Project Aya. Really, it's Project Her, but people call it Project Aya. It's Project Aya. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and also most importantly, I'm working with authors now. So right now I'm working with the first Mexican-American NBA head coach. He coached for the Portland Blazers in 2013. And he's also from Laredo, Texas. I'm hoping to get him a book due by the end of the summer. So I'm bringing some of these stories to the world. Also working with the first Latino Olympic medalist in middle distance. He's from Texas, and he won a silver medal at the 2012 Olympic Games. So I really want to help Latino communities bring their stories to life. So that's what I'm really focused on right now.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Giving back.
Yes. And it's not going to take 15 years to do it, because it took me 15 years to do this one. We're expediting it, yes.
So you walked so they could run.
Exactly.
Speeding up the process.
Yes.
I wanted to know, after you told your story, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that you spoke about was things that the most people around you did not know was happening, that were happening. What has been the reception from your close friends or family who had no idea of what you went through in your
I think they're in the last chapter.
Okay.
No, I did get messages today actually from coaches from my high school actually, who are like, oh, you should turn it into a TV series, or like, this is amazing. Those who already finished reading it, because it was just out a couple days ago. But the people who have read it have said great things, and my close friends knew about the story, but for a long time I did keep some of those parts from the story away, like from anyone, just because, especially the coach part, because I felt ashamed, embarrassed, and I thought like, who's gonna believe me? But I realized, I need to honor my truth and give a voice to people who also are experiencing similar things. But yeah, I think the people who have read it have had great reactions and are excited about the book.
Thank you for your courage and sharing all that you went through. It's the last question, and it's my favorite question, because I often think of 14-year-old Hector, right? And everything that he was going through and how far I've come. And what I would tell him, and I always get it, like I just got goosebumps just even saying that, but like what I would tell that young boy. But if you could go back and give your 14-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
14-year-old self, that's a great question. I think young Elvira would have liked to hear from her adult self that everything's gonna be okay. Like, it's all gonna turn out fine. as long as she's, it's her the willingness to just try, and even if she falls over the hurdle, it's gonna be okay. I think if an adult told her that, I think she would probably be less stressed about the situation that was happening that was out of her control. So I would definitely have told myself that, like, it's gonna be okay. It's all gonna work out. What about yours? What would yours be? I'm curious.
It's not my book.
I still want to hear it. We pretend like we're both 14.
100%. I had a lot of identity issues as a 14-year-old. I've always been heavy set, never been athletic, and I was very insecure about who I was. And that came with like being made fun of in school and just like not fitting into my clothing and being 14 and wearing men's clothing because I could not shop at the children's place. But now in hindsight, none of that matters, and if I could go back and speak to that young boy, I would tell him, you will grow up to be this amazing leader who starts this running movement north of Central Park, and being picked last in a basketball game or not being picked at all will not matter. The opinion of your peers will not matter once you're out of junior high school. In high school, you will not even speak to these people. I would tell him to keep his head up and walk proud like the king that he is.
That's beautiful. I think we're gonna get him a book deal.
That is the conclusion of the questions that I had prepared for our Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Elvira?
Great job. Great work.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for sticking with it for 15 years. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from your story, especially in all the Laredos in the world. And I'm curious, it took 15 years, so what are some of the stories that inspired you along the way?
Along the way? People usually ask me, like, who is your role model? Yeah, right, similar. I don't feel like I had one. I did have one, but much later I realized that it was this person, and I mentioned it in the book. Her name was Gerda Wiseman. She's a Holocaust survivor, and she came to my middle school in 8th grade, and I just couldn't believe that. Only because she had gone through so much and lost so many people in her life, and her title of the book was called All But My Life. And so when I was in juvie, I remembered her, and I thought, like, everything's going wrong, you're a kid, and you're just thinking the whole world is just messed up. But I remember that story, and I'm like, man, she wrote a book, and all these people are inspired and are hoping that those things don't happen again, and there's more peace in the world and everything. So I gravitated towards that story, and that inspired me to write the book. So I mentioned that in the book. And sadly, she passed away like 4 or 5 months ago, because I was like, I hope the book makes it to your hands. But yeah, definitely her story. And I didn't realize that she was really the big inspiration behind the book and my drive, but I would say she was. Yeah, and by the way, Allie's from Laredo. Yeah, so grew up and raised in Laredo. So you haven't finished reading the book though, right? No, okay, so we'll have to wait for her.
How far are you? It gets better.
It gets better. The audiobook, by the way, guys, is amazing. Like, so much work was put into it, but the audiobook, I tried doing the Tejano accent, the accent in my barrios, everything, and quacking, barking, you name it.
Are you making animal noises?
Yeah, apparently, because I didn't realize I was going to be reading the book. I would have definitely changed that. Because I was YouTubing, like, how does animal sound?
How does a dog sound in Laredo? Can you show us?
Definitely not the same.
No, not the same as a New York
different
dog.
breeds. No.
Can you show us?
No, that was not. Hear the audiobook.
Can't wait.
Are you coming to Laredo?
I think so. Yeah, probably later this summer. Once
I'd love to see you when you
stuff.
come. So
Oh, thank you. Well, definitely, you'll be the first one.
Thank you. It'll be an honor.
She's like, yes. Thanks. Same here.
What was the education system like in Laredo when you grew up, when you were young? You're obviously well educated. Did you have to work harder? Or did teachers take an interest in you, or what was it like?
Yeah, I feel like I excelled in like elementary, middle school, where they had to change me classes in middle school because my teacher told my mom, like, she just knows too much history and she knows every answer. We'd like move her to the other class. And it wasn't until I moved to the north side and I moved schools to Alexander High School where I really saw the difference in my education. Because before that, I went to school in the south side and I felt like I excelled there. But then I moved to this north side where I felt like I had an accent there. And yeah, I barely passed my English class, and I'm sure my English teacher would be very honest about that because he knew I wanted to write a book. He's like, "You want to write a book?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." But yeah, I did struggle with school in high school, particularly because I didn't realize also I was suffering from dyslexia, and I hated reading. I didn't read books only for school purposes. So I didn't have books at home. And also in Laredo, one thing that I mentioned is that we have the highest illiteracy rates in the country. And at the time, as a kid, they closed the only bookstore at some point, so there was no bookstores. But also, one of the things that I'm curious that I want to tackle is the illiteracy rates. Like, is it a combination of first gen or just being more Hispanic, it's 95% Latinos, or is it because they don't see themselves in books? So I'm still trying to figure that out, and it's my top thing, one of my main goals to figure that out. And hopefully it's bringing these stories like the coach and who grew up in Laredo and the other stories that maybe this inspires young people to read. Yeah.
They both went to the same high school, so
Yeah, we did. We did, yeah, very different. I think it would have looked different if I stayed in the south side. I probably would have realized that like maybe my English wasn't as good. Yeah, even though it's not far, there's a disparity, like wealth disparity. Definitely.
So how did you get into the other school? Did you move?
We wrote a fake address because it's like based on zip code, right? You guys know that. So like my mom and I moved to an apartment, and my mom like I don't mention that because I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah, we didn't live in the zone, but she really wanted me to go there. And then a track coach recruited me in 8th grade, and so my mom was like, "You got to take you to that school," and she just wanted the best for me. Yeah.
Let's clap it up for Elvira.
It's so funny because it all comes back around. So, like 2016, Josh, you invited me to go on a run a long time ago. I don't know if you remember that because we used to do the nonprofit, the Little Feet, at the Armory. And you kept inviting me. I'm so sorry I didn't take your offer. I was like, man, how long do I gotta run? I'm like, I only run from cockroaches and rats these days. So.
What are you doing on Monday night? What are you doing tomorrow night?
Well, good thing you have nothing planned, or should I say we do? How long?
You do not. It's a 3-mile social run, 2-mile walk. You and your
Morgan,
get back uptown again.
You guys are all invited to come.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Be in community.
That sounds fun. That sounds really fun. Are you also going to be there, Josh?
Every Monday.
Every Monday?
For the last 10 years.
For the last 10 years, yeah. I remember you would invite me all the time. It all comes back around. He's like, yeah, you didn't show up.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
7:15.
Whereabouts? You guys meet nearby?
184th from Broadway at the north end.
Okay.
Food hall.
Okay.
I'll send you the info.
Awesome. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you guys.